people who are watching from our Zoom webinar setup here. So I just want to go over the technology a little bit. So this is going to be a home buyer seminar, although recently it sounds like we're talking about our grocery list, but it really is going to be about home buying. And if you're watching on Facebook, there's a little bit of a delay compared to what's actually going on in our Zoom meeting. So if you want a little bit of a better quality, you can go and hop into the Zoom meeting. The link's in our Facebook event page. Otherwise, you can feel free to keep watching on Facebook. Just know that when you comment, it's going to be a little bit of a delay. So we have quite a few people joining us from both areas, which is awesome. I will try to keep an eye on the chat box while we're all presenting, and then we'll kind of circle back and get questions dealt with. So don't feel like we're ignoring you if we don't answer your questions. So I'm actually just really quickly going to stop sharing my screen so that you can see our beautiful faces better, and we'll do some quick introductions. So Becky, you're on my top left of my screen at least, so do you want to start with an intro?
Sure. Hi, I'm Becky. I'm in the top left. I'm Becky Brown. I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker Community Realtors in Northampton. And hello to everybody watching.
Awesome. And our attorney tonight?
Hi, I'm Tim Riley. Great to be here. And I'm an attorney based in Northampton, Massachusetts, and I service the entire state. And nice to see everybody. Thanks for having me.
Great. And I'm Lindsay Barron-Labonte. I'm a loan officer at Applied Mortgage. We are a branch of Harbor One Mortgage. Really excited to be trying out this whole webinar-based learning tonight. So bear with us if we have any technology issues. All right, excellent. So we're going to kind of start off with the mortgage side of things, and then we'll run through the fun part, probably with more fun part, which is actually looking for the house with Becky. And then we'll talk about the roles of the attorney and how the attorney is really an important part of the process. Obviously making sure your contract's legally binding and everything. So this is basically going to be a quick overview from each of us. We're only going to do about 10 minutes each if I stop being so long-winded, and then we'll have more questions at the end. So a lot of people, probably 90% of my conversations start by the person contacting me and saying, I really don't know where to begin, so I'm just calling you. And that's perfect, because really that's where we want you to start. We want to work together, and your loan officer should really help you figure out the best mortgage that's going to meet your needs as a buyer. And that's going to be very different depending on your financial situation. So we're going to review your goals. We're going to check your credit. We'll look at your financial documents, and then we'll help you kind of look at your budget if you already have one, or maybe make a new budget. And then we want to make sure that your goals, your financials, your credit scores, and what you're comfortable doing, most importantly, actually aligns with the mortgage programs that are available. So it's pretty simple to apply. You can do it right from your cell phone, you can call me, or you can do it over our website. So really whatever you're comfortable with. And this is right now because our brick and mortar is closed, but normally you can also come into our office, we can meet in person. So first things we're going to talk about are your goals. So the property location, what you're looking for. The mortgage programs will be a little bit different depending on whether you want to buy a single family versus a condo or a multifamily, whether you're going to live in the house or if you're going to rent it out. So part of the planning is just assessing your goals. The next step is really reviewing your budget. So your budget's going to capture what your income is and what your expenses are. And then we're going to work with that to see what's left over for your housing payment and what you're comfortable actually paying. So just to plug my last webinar, there's a video about creating a budget if you have any questions about how to do that. And then also factored into all of this would be your future plans too. So is this a short-term house for you, or is it a long-term house? Do you think you're going to get a job promotion soon? Do you think you're going to be leaving a job soon? So all of that goes into effect. So the types of financials that we usually look at, it depends on what your financial situation is, but these are the most common: pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, bank statements, any other property information that you own, and then divorce, separation agreements, anything like that. So that's sort of the baseline. A lot of people have questions about how credit scores work and what the range is for credit scores. So the best credit's usually 740 or above, but there is a range anywhere from 350 to about 850. And what impacts your credit scores the most is your payment history, of course. Are you making your payments on time? And then another 30% of the credit score, there's kind of an algorithm. So this is just an idea of what the credit scores are based on. But they don't want people cracking the algorithm. So disclaimer, this changes all the time. So your payment history, what amount you owe, especially on your revolving debt, so credit card debt, you want to keep the balance low compared to the credit limit. It's also going to factor in the length of your credit history, whether you have new credit, and then what your credit mix is. So that means you have a mix of revolving debt like credit cards, and then other debt like student loans, car loans, mortgages. You can get a free credit report online, and this is probably the best, most legitimate website to use. Once we have all this figured out, we are going to issue a pre-approval. So people use the term pre-approval and pre-qualification interchangeably. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The most important thing is that whoever is pre-approving you or pre-qualifying you, whichever language they're using, they need to have reviewed your credit report and your financials. If they haven't reviewed those, your pre-approval letter is basically as good as the paper it's written on, which is nothing. So make sure your financials are reviewed. There's a bunch of different types of mortgages. So you'll hear terms thrown around: conventional mortgages, government mortgages, state housing, renovation, construction. So all the different mortgages, we're going to be looking at what suits your needs. So for example, if you're a first-time home buyer, or you have maybe less down payment, less income history, less credit history, there's plenty of loan programs. Mass Housing First-Time Homebuyer Loan. There's conventional first-time homebuyer loans with 3% down. There's rural housing and VA that are 100% financing. So I'm not going to go through all of these in detail because I think I'm probably maybe about 8 minutes into my allotted time. But essentially, the job of the loan officer is to work with you and look at your down payment that you have available, and then your income and the rest of your financial situation to figure out which of these loan options is the best. If you go somewhere and they just say, oh, sorry, you don't fit into our one loan option, well, you should probably go somewhere else that maybe has other options available. Not every lending institution is going to have access to every loan program. So just really quickly, some common mortgage language that's thrown around. We use so many acronyms in this business. I actually have a rule with my staff. I do not let them use acronyms because it's so confusing. So we want to talk in real language, right? So you'll hear debt to income, which basically is a comparison that we use to analyze your debt compared to your income. Loan to value is how much you're borrowing compared to what the house is worth. You'll hear about private mortgage insurance, which usually you have some type of private mortgage insurance or PMI unless you put down more than 20%. Some of the documents that are really important that are used basically for you to compare and analyze the terms of your loan and understand the terms of your loan are the loan estimate that's sent out in the beginning of the process, and then the closing disclosure that's sent out at the end of the process. So that's really those are the documents that kind of bind the lender into the terms and the fees and the closing costs that we're disclosing to you for your purchase. So to get a little bit more into the funds to close and your closing costs, when you buy a house, it's not free, unfortunately. You've got to pay people to help you buy the house, and you have to pay for things. So typically, you'll have your down payment, which is a percentage of the purchase price, but then you also have to pay closing costs, and you have to pay taxes, and you have to pay insurance. So the closing costs are typically made up of all the work that the lender's doing to give you the loan, and also the credit check and the appraisal fee. You're also going to pay for some work that your attorney does for you. Their big job, and I won't do a spoiler for Tim because he's going to go over all of this, but doing all of the title exam work and document prep and looking at the survey and all that. You're going to have home inspections, and then you also have to buy your homeowner's insurance and pay for real estate taxes. That can get really expensive depending on what the taxes cost on the house. So you want to talk to your loan officer, and you want to get a really thorough idea of your budget going into buying. The reason you meet with your loan officer first, and Becky will go over this in her section, is because you don't want to fall in love with a house that's totally outside of your price range. So our job as a loan officer is really to help you rein in the budget and figure out what works for you. One little side tip is that in certain circumstances, you can negotiate in a seller closing cost credit. So the seller may be able to help you pay your closing costs. And the other really important thing to know is that usually your realtor gets paid by the seller. So you don't usually have to pay your realtor. Once you finally have a house and it's under contract, we're going to go through this whole formal mortgage application process. So these are a lot of bullet points. The big picture here is that it's about a 6-week process where you'll formally apply for your loan. You'll get us any financial documents we need updates on since your pre-approval. You'll go through your inspection. You'll go through the purchase and sale, the appraisal, and then we're going to send you a final mortgage commitment letter so that you actually know that you can close. And finally, you'll end up owning the home. So along the way, you have a lot of people that help you, and 2 of those people are here tonight. So I want to introduce our next person up. I think I might have used 11 minutes, but that's all right. We'll see how we do. So we have the fun part here, looking at houses, and I'll turn it over to Becky. I'm just going to exit so that hopefully you can start sharing.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everybody. Again, if you've just joined, I'm Becky Brown. I'm a realtor with Coldwell Banker Community Realtors in Northampton. Let me get my screen going.
Yeah, and I'll just check the chat too. If you're watching on Zoom, can you just comment in the chat box so that I want to make sure that the chat box is coming through. And if you're on Facebook, I see a lot of people actually watching on Facebook. I promised Becky I wouldn't say how many people are watching, so.
Yeah, don't. Actually, can you just do a screen check for me? Are you seeing my presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So yeah, Coldwell Banker Community Realtors, we have 4 offices throughout Hampshire and Franklin counties, but we serve the entire Pioneer Valley. I'm out of our Northampton office, which is downtown. But we're also in South Deerfield, Amherst, and Shelburne Falls. Lindsay kind of set me up to be super exciting. We're not actually going to talk a whole lot about looking at houses because that's pretty straightforward. We're going to talk more about making an offer and doing inspections. But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about what my role is as a realtor because not everybody fully understands that when they start the process. So I'm a project manager. I keep everything flowing from the first to the last step of a transaction. And my main goal as a realtor is for all of my clients to feel really confident with their decisions. So I like them to be as informed as possible. I'm a liaison between all of those people that you see listed there. There's a lot of people involved with your transaction, and I tend to be the central hub through which communication flows. And I like to joke that for every phone call, text, or email you get from me, there's a dozen or more that are happening in the background. And I'm also a resource. So you might need recommendations for contractors, you might need market activity information, general advice. You might need some reassurance or tough love at some point if things crop up, as they often do during a transaction. And this is when I like to point out that when I make recommendations for other professionals, I don't receive any referral fees for that. I recommend people with whom I've worked successfully in the past, or if it's a contractor for a job that I haven't had to do before, then I'll use someone who's been highly recommended by a colleague of mine. And Lindsay also pointed out that buyers don't pay their agents except in some extremely rare circumstances, but that's something else that a lot of first-time home buyers are surprised by. We get paid out of the proceeds of the sale at closing whenever that happens, and that generally comes from the seller. So quick overview, and we're going to go through this quickly and then dive a little deeper into each section. And I'm going to preface this by saying you're still going to have questions about this. So also one of my jobs throughout the process is to answer your questions no matter how many times you need them answered. So you can always feel comfortable repeating those. So like Lindsay said, pre-approval is the first step because I don't want to take you to see a $700,000 house if your budget is actually $220,000. And then we meet and we talk about what your needs and your wants are, and those aren't always the same thing. We set up showings. We set you up for a search on my site, downtownbeckybrown.com, and you fall in love with a house. You make an offer, your offer gets accepted, congrats. You put down a first deposit. You have about 10 days for your inspections. Then you move to the purchase and sale, which Tim is going to speak more about. And that's when you put down your second deposit, which is generally about 12 days after a signed offer. And then about 6 to 8 weeks after your offer was signed, you own a home. My enter button isn't working to move to the next slide. Okay, so we're here at making an offer. There we go. This is kind of like the anatomy of an offer, and again, I'm not going to dive too deeply into it because we could spend a lot of time doing that. But when you're making an offer, there's some pieces you can expect to go into it. One of those is your offer price, and some of the things that will inform what you offer are the home's market value, which we take a look at some comparative houses that have recently sold. How long has the home been on the market? What's the absorption rate, which is a fancy way of saying, is it a seller's market or a buyer's market? What's your financial flexibility? What's the location of the home? How motivated are you? There we go. You're also going to put in there what your deposit's going to be. So Lindsay spoke a little bit about down payment. Sometimes deposit is the same amount as your down payment. What's important to know is that your deposit goes towards your down payment. We generally recommend 5% of the purchase price as your deposit. If you're only doing a 3% down loan, then you wouldn't do a 5% deposit. You would do 3% if you're able to. If you're putting 20% down, we still generally don't recommend going over 5% as your deposit. And that deposit secures the home, basically. It's an earnest money payment, and it says to the seller, I'm serious about this. It's done in 2 installments. One is with the signed offer, and it's generally a $500 check, but that sometimes varies. And then the rest is with your the purchase and sale. Closing date. Closing date depends on a few factors as well. Generally 6 to 8. I see my slide. I didn't edit. It should say 6 to 8 weeks. Depends on your flexibility, your motivation, what financing you're doing. Some financing moves more quickly than others. I like to check in with your lender on what they think. And it's typically about 6 to 8 weeks though. And then you also include any contingencies. So there's an inspection contingency, meaning that there needs to be a satisfactory inspection or you can back out. There's mortgage contingencies. Lindsay mentioned maybe closing costs. Maybe you need seller covered closing costs. And we can work that into contingencies as well. You might include appliances. This is also where you would say, okay, this is what we're offering, but we really love that picnic table or your lawn furniture, and we want that included as well. So you submit your offer, and then it gets accepted, countered, or rejected. Once it gets accepted, which it will, you send in your first deposit, which is generally $500. You send that to the list agent's brokerage, usually, not always, sometimes the attorneys. You notify your lender right away, let them know that your offer was accepted, and you immediately start getting your inspections scheduled. This is really important because it's time sensitive. So, inspections, here we are. Okay, first I'll talk about the technical stuff and then a little narrative. You want to get those scheduled as soon in that 10-day period as humanly possible. It's an expense that you pay for up front, so you bring your checkbook to the inspection. These are some of the inspections that you might do: mechanical, structural, radon, pest, lead. If the home was built prior to 1978, you may need to test the water. So inspections are designed to point out every flaw of a home, and that list at the end can be kind of long and it can be really intimidating, and it's nobody's favorite day. But the main takeaway is that the objective is not to get the sellers to fix every detail that comes up. You're never going to get a perfect home. But you want to be on the lookout for potentially large or hazardous or environmental issues. Those are really like the big red flag things. And then once the inspections have been completed, we will discuss whether it makes sense or not to request repairs from the sellers or to renegotiate the deal accordingly. And every single transaction is unique in what you come up with. Just really quickly here, at that point, right around 12 days from when you've signed and inspections are all done and renegotiating is done, you sign your purchase and sale, which the attorneys have been working on, and you submit the balance of your deposit. So whatever that 5% is, less the $500 you've already paid, you bring that check to the list agent's brokerage. And then you get to closing, but about 7 to 10 days before closing is when you want to set your utilities up so that you have electricity the day that you move in. You'll schedule a final walkthrough with myself. You'll schedule your closing with your attorney. And I'm sure Lindsay mentioned this, but you don't make any big purchases, open new lines of credit. You don't invest in all of your furniture before you get to this point. You wait until after close because you don't want your credit to take a hit. So quick summary: day 1, offer submitted. Day 2 to 3, offer accepted, your deposit. Day 3 to 13, you do inspections and your financing gets started. I probably don't actually need to read this, but this is just another way to look at how this plays out. I can hear my kids yelling in the background, sorry. So quick summary, this is how we want the process to look: a nice straightforward line, but realistically, there's usually some curves and some bends in the road, and honestly, that's fine. Every transaction has hiccups, and you just work through it. There's almost no situation that a solution can't be figured out for, and as long as you have a team working for you that you are confident in and feel comfortable talking with and working things out, then you should be good to go. So to that end, I'm now going to pass it over to Tim Riley to talk about the role of an attorney in making sure that your transaction goes smoothly. So Tim, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Becky. That was great. Thank you, and Lindsay.
I really liked that curvy little path there because
how perfect is it though? I mean, it's never straight from A to B, right?
Yeah. Right. It's perfect. Yeah.
But we all help each other. So, and just before you start, just anybody that just joined us on Facebook or in the Zoom discussion. So we are on Zoom right now. Anybody on Facebook who wants to watch it a little bit more real time can hop into the Zoom link, which is on our event page, or you can keep watching on Facebook. just know that it's about a minute delay. If you have any questions or comments, just throw them in either of the chat boxes, and we'll circle back to them at the end, and we'll answer questions here. So thanks for watching.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay. So my name is Tim Riley. I'm a real estate lawyer based in Northampton, Massachusetts, but I service the entire state. And I'm here to talk to you about the role of the attorney in the closing process. So what does a lawyer do? Why do I need a lawyer for a closing? If you live in Massachusetts, you want to buy a house in Massachusetts, you need a lawyer. So what the lawyer does is we review the offer that Becky puts together, and we compare it to the purchase and sale agreement. We help the seller's lawyer sends us a copy, purchase and sale agreement. We hash it out. We review it to make sure the offer and the purchase and sale agreement match. We review the terms with the buyer. So the purchase and sale agreement is going to be 5-6 pages, could be longer. We take those terms, we take the legal language that's in there, and we review it with the buyer so you understand what you're getting into and what the contract says. We draft and review closing documents. So typical closing with a lender is going to be 80 to 100 pages. It sounds bad, but it's not. It goes pretty quick. But my job is to draft some documents and also review the documents that the lender sends. So make sure they're all accurate and ready for the closing so there's no delay. We also conduct a title search. So we go back 50 years in the title to your property. We make sure that you're not going to inherit a property with somebody else's property. Make sure those are ironed out before you take time. We help the buyer understand the process. So how do we do that? We explain legal documents. Like I said, this transaction's full of legal documents, an offer, purchase and sale agreement, and then the closing documents. So we explain those so you understand them. We actually put them in English. We take them out of the lawyer language and we put them in English, which people appreciate. We explain your rights and responsibilities. You are putting yourself into you're locking yourself into a business arrangement, buying a house from somebody else. So you have rights, but you also have responsibilities, and you should know what those are before you get involved in it. We answer legal questions. Of course, we're lawyers. We answer legal questions. That's what we do. But we answer pretty much any question you have. So when you talk to your lawyer, ask the legal questions, but also ask any other questions you have, because we're happy to remove some of the stress that you're feeling. Don't let questions fester. Ask the big three. I call them the big three: the lender, the realtor, and your lawyer. Ask us your questions. You don't stress out. We assist with issues. What issues? Well, the title problems. There's a title problem with the property. We work with the seller's lawyer to iron those out so you don't have to deal with it. We negotiate with the seller. When we draft a purchase and sale agreement, there's a lot of legalese in that agreement, and we hash those out with the seller. We negotiate. There's a bit of give and take. So there's some give and take in the offer process with Becky, but there's also with the purchase and sale. And then we resolve issues at closing. So something might come up the day before the closing or the morning of the closing. So I'm there to work with Becky to help resolve any issues, to work with your realtor. We had a closing recently where there was an RV on the property. Becky resolved that before we got to the closing day. But sometimes we get calls on the day of the closing. Hey, there's 6 unregistered cars still in the driveway. Hey, the pool collapsed. Hey, they're not moved out. So those are the types of issues that I can help with. And those all did happen. How do you choose an attorney? How and when do you choose an attorney? What's that?
I just not having people moved out.
It happens more than I'd like to admit. People aren't realistic with the closing date and what it takes to move out. So how and when to choose an attorney? When? Well, I like to get involved as soon as possible. So as soon as Becky gets the offer signed by the seller, you get an accepted offer, give your attorney a call. Get your attorney involved, because they're going to take the offer and review it with the purchase and sale agreement to make sure it's accurate, make sure it's right. And remember, when you choose a lawyer, experience counts. Choosing your brother's sister-in-law's third cousin that did a closing 4 years ago, that's not going to work. I'm telling you. I know that maybe they're giving you a good deal, but you get what you pay for with a lawyer. So remember that. But experience counts. And if you don't know who to use, ask Lindsay, ask Becky, ask your realtor, ask your lender. They work with lawyers all day long. They know who the good ones are. So ask them if you don't know. the name of a good attorney that handles real estate. Give them a call. Doesn't hurt to give them a call and feel them out. Do you like them? Do you trust them? I get calls all the time from prospective clients. They want to get to know me a little bit. Is this the person that you want helping you through a complicated transaction? The answer is yes. You got your lawyer. It's the person to hire. And remember, like I said, it's not about the fee. Please don't make it about the fee. You get what you pay for. If you're focused on only the fee, then you might make a mistake and pick the wrong lawyer. Okay, so please make it more about the fee. And make sure your lawyer's on the lender's approval list. So you talk to Lindsay, you talk to your lender, and you say, is this lawyer on your list? If they're not, can they get on the list? Okay, so I've done thousands of closings in my career, and I've come up with Tim's tips for a smooth closing. So if you follow these tips, I guarantee your closing is going to be a lot smoother. Lawyers don't make guarantees, but I'll guarantee this. So number one, take it seriously. So many people think it's kind of something that gets done as an afterthought. Closing on a house is serious business. And if you saw the diagram that Becky gave, it can take some twists and turns, right? It's not going to be a straight line. So take it seriously. If your realtor or your lender call you, call them back. Be available. Okay. 2, funds for closing. This is an issue every single time I don't know what it is. I ask for a cashier's check. If you haven't gone to the bank to get a check, it's not a cashier's check. I can't take a personal check. I can't take a check from online banking a week later. It's got to be a cashier's check. It's the only funds that I can accept.
No bags of money?
I have gotten...
talk about that.
It's not a good idea, but I have received bags of money. They're very awkward to deal with, especially when I have to go to the bank with a bag of money.
I have so many bags of money.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't have a lot of those, but I've seen them. They're really cool. So photo ID. Make sure you have a driver's license or a passport. Can't take a Costco ID. I know it has a photo on it, but I can't take it. It's not a government ID. Please make sure it's not expired. Can't use it. Be flexible. Very simple, right? Roll with the punches. Be ready for things to not go your way sometimes. Becky said it's going to take some twists and turns. Be ready and be flexible. You're not always going to get your way. Be available. Take the day off for the closing. This has been coming up lately. People tell me, I've been working on this for 6 weeks and I really want to buy this house, but I couldn't get the day off, so I'm not going to be there. You have to be there. You have to be there to close. So take the day off. Be on time. Enough said, right? If you're late, then all my other closings are late. And if I don't get yours on record by 4 o'clock, you can't move in. So please be on time. Moving in, like I said, there's a process. You come and meet with me, we sign documents, then I got to meet with the seller, then I got to wait for the bank wire to come in, and then I record. You cannot move in until I'm officially on record and I've recorded it. So don't be ready if you can't move in till late in the day. If you need to move in earlier, give me a call a few weeks ahead of time, not the day before. Okay? Let us know. Be realistic with the closing date. Like Becky said, 45 to 60 days. We need time to do what we need to do. So please give us that time so we can do this right. And it'll be less stressful. And no vacations, okay? I get this a lot lately too. There's no vacations between the offer and the closing date. You can't go to Bali for a month and disappear and not be reachable. You got to sign documents. You got to be available for questions. You got to do inspections. We need you to be there. So no vacations. How long will it take? It'll take an hour. Probably more like 30 to 45 minutes, the actual closing, but it's going to take some time. So carve out an hour in your day to be at the closing table. If you're in a rush, that's fine. We can address that. But be prepared for 60 minutes. Thank you and good luck. So those are my tips. You follow those, I guarantee you'll have a smooth closing. And thank you for listening, and back to you, Lindsay.
Awesome. All right. So that's some real good, tough advice there that I really appreciate from Tim. So we did have a couple questions in the chat box, and on our Facebook, we have a lot of people saying hi. So hi, everyone that's been saying hi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
Guys, my parents are watching. Hi, Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad.
Those are the best fans. So we had a couple questions in the chat. I just want to go back to, let's see. So one question, and Becky, you typed this out, but I'll have you just talk about it. So somebody's asking, Becky, when you were talking about your presentation, you used the word motivated a lot for buyers. What's your definition of a motivated buyer?
Yeah, so it's not a definition, but it does cover a few different things. So I had it, I believe, and I'm not looking at my slides now, but under determining an offer price. So you might be really motivated, like this is your house, there's not a lot of inventory on the market, you have a little bit of flexibility with your financing, or you're a cash buyer, and you're willing to go at asking or maybe a little bit above. So that would be motivated. And also, I mean, I didn't talk a lot about this, but you want to make sure that you're not going so high over an offer that it won't appraise if you're financing. So you could say like, oh, I just want to throw all this money at it, but it still has to appraise when you're financing something. But we're talking about motivation. So in the response, I said, are you under any time pressure? So do you have a new job that you're starting and you need to be in this house on a certain date? Do you have a lease that is expiring and they already have a new tenant moving in on a certain date, and so you absolutely need somewhere to land? So those are some of the things that I mean when I say motivated. So if you're motivated, and we're talking about a closing date, and a seller comes back and says, hey, I like all the terms of this offer, but I need to close 2 weeks later or 2 weeks earlier. If you're really motivated, you're gonna say, okay, I can work with that. I'll find a couch to crash on for 2 extra weeks. Or yeah, absolutely, I'm willing to pay 2 more weeks of prorated taxes, even though I didn't want to move. How motivated are you? How flexible are you willing to be to get the home that you're looking at?
Perfect. And all of that just speaks to how important it is to just get your goals across to the whole team. I mean, your realtor, of course, because that's kind of the point person, and your lender and attorney. And we really want to communicate, and we all want to be on the same page so that we know what your goals or your motivating factors are, and we can make sure that everything works out. Another question was, how is this process different if you're purchasing the house from a family member rather than the house actually being listed, I'm assuming? So yeah, so we do get, I'll start and then you can chime in. So just from a financing perspective, there are different loan options actually kind of available, not so much different loan options, but just the way that you can structure the down payment. If you're related to the person selling the house, there's something called a gift of equity. So in a family transfer, they can sort of just transfer you their equity if they want less than the actual value of the house. That can become your down payment. So we would just look at it at a little bit of strategy based on your goals and the family that's selling it to you, their goals. I, a lot of times, still suggest that you use a realtor to facilitate the transaction and just factor that into your overall costs that you'd normally have if you're going to buy a house anyway, because there's a lot of steps that go into the process. You're still going to have to draw up the formal contracts, and a realtor can be really helpful there. If you don't use a realtor, then you want to make sure that you definitely use a really solid real estate attorney like Tim, who can actually help you and kind of do more of the negotiating and hand-holding process, for lack of a better term, that the realtor would normally facilitate for you. So hopefully that makes sense. I don't know, Tim, if you have anything else to add to.
So I don't, what was the question? I mean, I know that.
Yeah, just what's different if you're buying from a family? Within family, I should say. Yeah,
everybody should be represented. Everybody. If you're buying from your sister, if you're buying from your dad, oh no, we don't need a lawyer. Yeah, we don't need a lawyer until we end up fighting over something.
Yeah.
A lawyer protects you and they don't want to pay a lawyer. Or I get a lot where, can you represent me and my brother? No way. Because first of all, you and your brother or you and your sister might get into a fight over the deal. And there might be some dispute where, hey, you said the Title V was going to be good. It's not. That cost me $10,000 extra. And I want my money. And if I'm in the middle of that, I'm going to get sued. And I can't provide good legal representation to either one of you. I have to back out. So that's the biggest problem with family stuff. And then, like you said, hire a realtor. They know so much about transactions. You got to get a smoke. The Title V has to be done. They know how to negotiate. They know how to do so many things that people don't, appreciate. So, let them. They earn their commission. Believe me.
When you have a facilitator, when you have a realtor functioning as a facilitator, the fee can be less because we're not doing the same amount of work. But one thing that comes to mind as being really important is, that family member might be willing and able to have some flexibility on the price that they're selling you the home for, but they should still have a really good idea of what their home is worth. And I'll make an anti-Zillow plug here as far as the Zestimate goes. It only takes you so far. So maybe you don't sell the house or buy the house for full market value, but it's still a figure that everybody should be aware of. Mm-hmm. And a realtor can help you figure that number out.
Yeah, value is so important. People don't know the value of their houses. They think they do, but they don't.
Yeah.
So I said, you guys do this all day long. So you can go and look at a property and give a value very quickly. And I agree with you about Zillow. It's not lock solid.
I think it's 20% variance either way in this area, something like that I was reading about. So don't trust Zillow.
It's insignificant. Yeah.
It's 20% either direction.
It's 110% either direction.
One other question, just a quick one. So Becky, you had listed a bunch of home inspection options. What's kind of the most common that people do? Do they start with one and move on to others?
Yeah, so structural mechanical is the must. And it's not, technically speaking, it's not a must. I've had some clients who are coming in, experienced investors, and they say, we want to waive the inspections. We don't care. We know it's fine. And that's fine. But for most of my clients, I really insist on a structural mechanical inspection at the very least. Because we live in an area with high radon levels in the soil, I generally recommend doing a radon test. If a home is on a well, you may want to test the water as well, especially if you're testing for radon. Lead, if the home is pre-1978 and the owner doesn't have any records of a lead test, it's most important if there are going to be children under the age of 6 or 6 and under, and or any pregnant individuals living in the home. And also for people who are investing in the property to be landlords, because you can't deny tenancy to anybody with children under 6 just because you haven't done a lead test. So if you are a family with older children, or you're a family who will not have children, you don't have to do a lead test, but there's circumstances under which you would really want to. Pest, you can either, sometimes inspectors will do their own pest inspections. Sometimes it's a separate inspection. And if you don't want to pay that right up front, you can have the inspector keep an eye out for signs of pest damage, and then choose to have somebody come and do a full inspection, which is another reason we highly recommend starting your inspections as early in that time period as possible. Because if anything comes up, and I didn't mention this, but if anything comes up that needs further evaluation, then you need time to also schedule somebody to come in and take a look at whatever that thing is. And the clock is ticking that whole time. So you want to leave yourself some leeway to get all of the information that you need.
Great. Awesome. So just for anyone else that's just tuning in and joining us, because Facebook's always fluctuating, So we're probably about to wrap up. We have 2 more questions. It looks like one's kind of directed at me and one's probably directed at Tim. So I'll go through those. And otherwise, if anyone else, either in the Zoom chat or the Facebook chat, has any other questions, we'll probably be wrapping up in the next 5 minutes or so, but we can definitely get to the last couple questions. So one question that came in was, what are acceptable sources of down payment? So not just the question that Tim was going over, or use a cashier's check and don't bring cash. But another important piece is that if you're getting a mortgage, your lender has to verify all of the money that you're using for the transaction. So you can't just bring that bag of cash in anyway, because we've got to know where it came from. And people will ask me that. I'll say, well, how much money do you have saved up in your bank account? Because if it's in your mattress or it's in your friend's backpack, that doesn't count. So it's got to be in a bank account. It's got to come from your payroll. You can get a gift from relatives. That's okay for most loan programs. Gifts are okay, but it can't be a loan. So you can't borrow money to then use to borrow more money unless it's attached to another property, an equity line. We don't need to get into all those details, but bottom line is keep your money in your bank account, and that's what you can use for a mortgage. So I think that probably answers that. And a question that came in from the beginning of your presentation, Tim, was you mentioned in Massachusetts you have to use an attorney. So what's the alternative? Are there other states where you don't use an attorney when you buy a house? Yeah,
in some states, many states use title companies, and we do have some title companies here in Massachusetts, but the lawyer has to be involved. I know I'm an attorney, so maybe I'm biased, but having a lawyer on your side is kind of a nice thing. I've handled enough closings where it's made a difference many times. So in Massachusetts, you need a lawyer involved with a real estate closing. Connecticut's another state that does that, but it's for your own protection. There's a lot of legalese in these contracts and a lot of things that can take twists and turns. So it's nice to have somebody looking out for you. I mean, that's got some experience in this.
Definitely. And so you're basically acting as an agent for the title company, essentially, because there's still the title exam and the title insurance.
Well, no, I actually, technically under the law, I represent the bank, but because the banks and buyers' roles are the same, if there's no conflict of interest,
right.
The way I look at it is I represent the bank and the buyer. I take the buyer representation very seriously. They're as if like a member of my family. I just have to watch out for them. That's my job. So that's what most lawyers do. That's why we became lawyers. So you do need an attorney.
Great. Awesome. So that's why they have to follow your tips so that they don't end up on your couch if the closing.
It'd be easier for everybody. It'd be a lot less stressful for everybody.
Definitely.
Just follow those tips.
Great. All right. Looks like we have one other question. Oh, my chat box.
I think there was a follow-up question, so that person who was asking about buying from their father instead of would the process be different? Followed up and said, we're already living in the home we want to purchase. We know what the most recent value is. Family members asking for less. So is the process any different? Lindsay, you can speak specifically to financing, but my response to that is probably timing would be the most significant difference, because you can waive inspections if you want to, and so you don't have that 10 business day period where you're waiting for the purchase and sale. Rather than writing up an offer, you might go straight to writing up the purchase and sale. But financing itself is still going to take time, right? So you could probably, maybe you would anticipate 4 to 6 weeks instead of 6 to 8. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's going to be specific on your scenario. So, I would say give one of us a call and we can dive into it more and kind of give you more specific detail based on what it is that you're looking to do.
Yeah.
And then there was one other question in the Facebook chat that just came through. How do you purchase an investment property that needs work to be done? Can I borrow money as a part of the mortgage to make renovations? So Short answer is yes, there are renovation mortgage options. It will be dependent on your lender whether they allow renovation loans on an investment property. Some mortgage program renovation loans are only for your primary residence, but some you can use on an investment property. So it really depends on the lender in that case.
I had a question for Becky. Is that okay? One question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, Becky, I got this from somebody today, and I think it'd be better coming from you. Is this a good time to buy a house with all the health issues, the safety?
We almost got through a whole hour without that question.
Yeah, sorry. I just thought it'd be good to answer.
No, everybody is asking that question right now. And like most questions in real estate, the answer is yes, and also it depends. So yeah, it can be a really good time to be buying a house right now. There's still not a ton of inventory, but I think because of the increase in unemployment, there's a little bit less competition from buyers. So there might be fewer multiple, like maybe there's only 3 bids on a home instead of half a dozen or more. So it really depends on what your current financial situation is, and Lindsay can address that as well. But if you still have a rock solid job, if you are pretty certain that you're not going to be unemployed anytime soon, then yeah, honestly, now is a great time to buy. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that so Lindsay can chime in. But yes, now is still a good time to buy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think what I'm seeing that's great is that the people who are selling need to sell and the people who are buying need to buy. So, I mean, that's basically the basis of why they kept real estate as an essential process during the shutdown, because, there are situations where you really have to be moving right now. And so the real estate transactions have to go on. So definitely, I mean, there's been an inventory shortage anyway in the area for a few years now, at least. So in a way, it's a little bit better now just because maybe there's not quite as many buyers. But I've still seen multiple offers situations a lot. So
have one happen right this moment.
Right now it's happening.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, thanks. I think we covered all the questions, and I think we're just about up on time. I might have even had it at 45 minutes originally, so we might be over. But thank you, everybody, for watching. And anything else, Becky or Tim, that you have on your mind?
Do we have contact information? I want to just say that you can always reach out with questions. You don't have any obligation to work with me just because you have a question. And this is my favorite topic, so I'm always happy to point you in the right direction or just have a conversation. And there's no pressure for you don't have to buy a house or buy a house with me just because I talked with you about something. So if you're just curious about anything real estate related. Do we have our contact information available anywhere for people to reach out if they do have questions?
Yeah, it's in the event page on Facebook would probably be the best way to find it, because this registration link for Zoom will be shut off after tonight. But everybody that registered, we have your email, so we can share that as well.
And I'm available as well. I have the same philosophy as Becky, and I'm sure you do, Lindsay. I'm open to questions. If you got, I became a lawyer because I love to give advice. So give me a call if you want advice on certain things, and I'm happy to help.
Yeah, that's literally, my job is literally talking to people. All of our job is. Last year I talked to 1,200 people the whole year. So not every single one of those worked with me, right? So
Right.
It's all about talking and educating and helping people. And, that's the fun part of it too, right? Is like the strategy. And
Yes. Yeah, because doing the actual work stinks, but talking about it is fantastic.
right.
Yeah. I love the strategy and the scheming. That's the best part of it.
No, it is though. It keeps it interesting.
Try trying to figure out a way to get a deal done is just
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody's got a different situation, and it's just so fun to solve that and make that line that you had, Becky, in the
Undo the knot, straighten it out.
Straighten it out.
Oh, it feels so good. I love it.
And kind of to answer the question about, is this a good time to be buying? I mean, regardless, it's a great time to be planning. I think it's kind of making people stop and assess their situation. And just, if you have questions or if you want to make a plan, definitely, it's a good time to reach out to any one of us.
Yeah. I think that's really great advice. And I always tell people when they come to me, like my favorite clients are the ones who have been figuring it out for a year or more. Because people will say, oh, we're not ready yet, but we think maybe in a year or two, so we don't want to talk about it yet. And I say, call a lender now. Get a plan together. Because you don't want to get to the point where you're ready to purchase in what you think is 2 months and have someone say, ooh, you actually have about 6 months of work that you need to do before you're ready. So always reach out in advance.
And I don't want to say that either and ruin your dream.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody that's watching in Zoom and on Facebook. And this will be posted just for the future if anyone wants to, come back and look at the beautiful PowerPoints or anything.
Where will it be posted?
It'll be on the Facebook page and on YouTube as well. Just the recording part, not the chat part. So.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Everybody be well. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Groceries come through.
Good luck in your process. Look at that.
All right. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.